In the headlines tonight, Barbados engaging in talks with multiple airlines with a view to boosting tourism and trade with Africa. Significant attention given to potential agricultural links between Caricom and Africa. Barbados' top law enforcement officers respond to the recent spate of shootings. And in sports, Sade Williams gets another second place in the Diamond League.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC NewsNight, starting now.
Very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Broom. Thank you so much for tuning in. In our top story tonight, Barbados has already started multiple conversations to shorten the tourism and trade bridge between Africa and the Caribbean. That was one of the main talking points emerging from day 2 of the Afri-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum. Word of the discussions Barbados has been having with potential airline partners for a direct link between the island and Africa came from Tourism and International Transport Minister Senator Lisa Cummins. She made the comment during a session this morning which focused on improving logistics between Africa and the Caribbean for the promotion of tourism, trade, telecommunications and investment.
Minister Cummins says while there have been attempts to create direct links in the past, none has panned out in the way officials would have liked. However, she notes in the past year in particular, significant strides have been made to turn around the situation.
I don't think that it gives any of us any pleasure when we need to be able to go to an African country or you coming to the Caribbean. Many of you talk about having to spend 28 hours, 40 hours moving between the two regions, going through London, having to navigate the difficulties of transit visas in the US and in the UK. And so what we're hoping to be able to do is to identify where would be the points of reference that would be the starting points to originate airlift. We started conversations with Air Rwanda, we started conversations with Ethiopian Airways, we've had conversations with Etihad as well. And we've also had discussions with Kenya Airways. We have already signed air services agreements with Kenya and with Ghana. We should be signing further air services agreements with our partners as we move forward.
The minister adds the full vision is not just for tourism but freighting of goods as well. She says the potential could also exist for Barbados to be an alternative gateway to the United States for travelers from Africa. And Deputy Minister of International Trade in Ghana's Ministry of Trade and Industry, Herbert Crapper, says the commercial case for the direct link is a major factor, inclusive of both tourism and trade.
The reason why it has not been successful all these years is because there's not been a viable economic commercial case for it. And so we have to look at it from that standpoint. And I'm very encouraged by the approach that the Afri-Exim Bank is taking, the practical approach to see that we are actually putting deals on the table. And that's the way that, because any carrier who knows that there's frequent, movement on the corridor would put a vessel, an aircraft on the corridor. But if there is no commercial case, I don't see how that happens. And I'm encouraged also by the fact that the current heads of state of the AU are gathering a lot of momentum for the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Barbados' Minister of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security, Indar Ware, says the region has fallen short on many fronts and has not taken advantage of value chain opportunities. He says more than 60% of products on the island's food import bill come via value chain products, including processed items and condiments. Minister Ware was among the panel for a discussion on improving food security, agricultural productivity, and expanding agribusiness opportunities.
If we are going to truly address the food import bill, we have to start to understand what it takes to get back to solid manufacturing so that we can address some of these issues. We also have to look at value chain and products through agri-processing, and therefore our agri-food systems need a total revamp. Our target of 25% by the year 2025 is only a start, and this is a baseline figure.
Minister Ware says through South-South cooperation, tremendous opportunities exist between Barbados and Africa.
Africa has land space. We're now introducing technology. I was involved in a conference in Costa Rica just before the crop over event. And what we looked at is how we can engage farmers and how we can use science and technology, digital agriculture as well, to be able to develop the sector and move people to the next stage.
Well, there are a number of African business people attending the conference. Among them is a Nigerian businessman who believes both trade and tourism possibilities are endless once governments from the Caribbean and African countries can finally eliminate the vexing issue of air and sea transportation. Vincent Okiki is the sales and marketing manager of Best Af Trading. It's a company that specializes in the production of petroleum-based containers for use across a wide range of industries, from food and beverage to large-scale storage. Now, he says he's been encouraged so far by the response from local business people.
It has been very, very positive. I mean, but one thing that has really come up is about the discussion about the freight costs coming all the way from Africa to the West Indies or the Caribbean area. But as you do know, part of the theme of this conference was actually trying to bridge the gap between Africa and the Caribbean, hence the introduction of possible straight liners, shipping liners coming directly from Africa all the way to Barbados without having to cut through Europe or Americas before hitting Barbados. So we want to be able to have straight, we're looking at the possibility and the time when we'll be able to have ship liners coming directly. You know, I mean, we're hoping that it's not going to be in the long term, we're hoping it's going to be on the short term.
And after being only in the island for little more than a day, he says he's encouraged to return next year for a visit with his family. He says consistent two-way tourism can be another tangible outcome from the forum.
I think there is a growing interest of Caribbean people wanting to go or visit motherland as it is, you know, at least, even if obviously, I mean, you're not leaving, you're not going to leave the Caribbean to move down, you know, but at least you want to just be able to have access to motherland. I mean, that's where we all came from, the lot of us, you know, so that opportunity definitely will be massively interesting on both sides, because we get to travel to other places like you know, Europe and Americas and stuff like that, and because of the lack of the transportation between ourselves, we find it difficult oftentimes to come down this way because it takes a lot of round tripping.
Well, coming up, the island's top law enforcement officials responded to an uptick in violent crimes. Against the background of several fatal shootings, Barbados' top law enforcement officials are assuring the island is still a safe place. This was stressed by Attorney General Dale Marshall and Commissioner of Police Richard Boyce during a press conference at police headquarters this afternoon. In the company of top officers, the AG called the recent shootings a spike, noting the force has the power to deal with the situation.
These criminals know and plot for the people who they're targeting. And invariably, it is the associates or members of the rival groups. To me, this signals that, on a whole, Barbadians remain safe in their homes and in their communities. So I want also to assure Barbadians that we have not descended into any state of anarchy. There's a spike, but these are not random shootings.
Boyce said the death toll could have been higher had the police not taken people into custody for their own safety. He added that police will be relentless in their pursuit of the criminals.
What has been discovered is that family members of persons who reside in the island are getting on board now and facilitating the movement of firearms from one jurisdiction to our jurisdiction, and that is some concern to us. So that is something that must be called out, something that must be highlighted, and action taken against.
Assistant Commissioner David Griffith, in complimenting the officers, told the media 15 of the 28 murders this year have been solved.
5 stabbings, 1 person strangled, 1 beaten. And from our investigations, it is very clear to us that the majority of, well, the majority of these murders are committed by persons affiliated with those groups, and they're exacting their own vengeance and therefore putting Barbadians in fear. But I want to assure Barbadians that it is more or less confined with that particular group, with the 21 gun-related murders amongst that group.
Well, the media conference by the AG and the force's top brass came less than a day after the latest deadly shooting, which resulted in what is the fourth suspected murder in 3 days. That incident took place last night in the area of Castle Heights at its junction with Eastbourne Main Road in St. Philip. Police say around 10 minutes to 10, a number of loud gunshots were heard before a car traveling in the area ran off the road into some shrubbery in front of a nearby residence. It was then that the body of an adult male was found slumped in the driver's seat. He was pronounced dead by a doctor who visited the scene. Police investigations are ongoing. Barbadians appear to support government's move to shorten the isolation period for people recovering from COVID-19. From Thursday, people who test positive for the viral illness can be discharged on the 7th day after receiving their result. Now, initially, the isolation time was 10 days. In a statement, the Ministry of Health notes the individual must be asymptomatic or showing improving symptoms for 3 days prior to discharge. It said if the individual remains symptomatic, isolation must be extended for a full 10-day period with no further testing required to exit isolation. Well, CBC took to the streets to see how Barbadians feel about this development, and generally they're pleased with the move.
I actually experienced COVID, and to me it was a strain of the cold. I don't think it's really necessary to be isolated for that length of time, considering that there's no factors in place to support you when you're being isolated.
I do have mixed views about it, but if that's what they agree to, I guess they find it reasonable that they can drop it to 7 days. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not as threatening as before, I believe that the 7 days can work.
We all in the children, and we got to take care of ourselves.
As far as I'm concerned, we ought to lift the restrictions, especially where the children are concerned, because they're the ones who are suffering the most.
77 new COVID-19 cases, 43 males and 34 females, were recorded from the 432 tests conducted yesterday, September 1st, by laboratories across the island. The cases consisted of 12 people under the age of 18 and 65 who were 18 years and older. There were 81 people in isolation facilities, while 863 were in home isolation. As at September 1st, there were 544 COVID-19 related deaths. Under the National Vaccination Program for COVID-19, the total number of people with at least one dose is 163,229, while the total number of fully vaccinated people is 154,417. In the business news tonight, we're hearing that opportunities exist for Barbados to become an all-year destination rather than a seasonal one. Word of this from Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Tourism Marketing Incorporated, Jens Trainhart. He made the comment at the Afri-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum currently taking place at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Center. He told the session he is optimistic opportunities abound in Africa.
With the commonalities between Africa and the Caribbean, I think we can really make sure that we drive inclusivity with that. So when it comes to ancestral ties with Africa and the Caribbean, and particularly Barbados, I think we can look at new products and not just focus on our now core markets, which is the UK, the US, and Canada, but really making sure that we look at new markets, and I think Africa is one of these new markets, emerging markets, where we can making sure that Barbados becomes an all-year-round destination, and we drive value to all our stakeholders.
Acting Secretary General of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, Neil Walters, says the CTO views Africa as an emerging market and one into which its members should expand.
We've always put it out there as almost an untapped source are nearly untapped source of people to be able to fill in the gaps, not only in terms of the seasons, but in terms of diversifying individual tourism sectors. The idea of linking the links between the continent, Africa, and the Caribbean. And I don't have to go into details on those. Over the years, for instance, we've had routes linked to our historical trade with Africa, one mentioned in this forum as well. But we have tried all of that and put those things out there as best practices that our members can look at.
Despite concerns over hurdles to trade with Africa, Premier of the British Virgin Islands, Dr. Natalia Wheatley, has welcomed the outreach to the continent, noting the region has taken a critical step through the conference.
The key to getting to any destination is to keep making steps after steps. So of course, the present global economy that we have has been established over a period of 500 years. And certainly you don't expect to make 500 years of progress all at one time. But the most important point that we must remember is that the chains that no longer necessarily binds your hands and your legs may still imprison the mind. And so it's extremely important for us to do as Bob Marley has said and as Marcus Garvey has said, which we were reminded of earlier, to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery.
Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence Drew, says cultural links are already there, and he expects Africans becoming citizens of various countries, the outreach will work.
We are looking at this now as a next step in the journey, and I think our people who have had and continue to build tangible and real relationships with African people, this would be easily digestible by our people, and I think our institutions now will definitely come on board. So this for us in St. Kitts and Nevis is not anything that we would not expect, and yes, we know that there are hurdles, as was mentioned before, but I think because of already having those cultural links, already having real marriages and having Nigerians and other Africans becoming citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, I think that something like this is really going to take off in our country.
We're also hearing that Caricom has a partner in the International Trade Center, whose executive director, Pamela Coke Hamilton, has voiced her support for the bloc's 25 by 25 initiative. Through it, heads of government have committed to reducing the region's large food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. Mrs. Coke Hamilton warned during a presentation on improving food security, agricultural productivity, and expanding agribusiness opportunities that countries must act now to boost food security or face a crisis of epic proportion on its hands.
Here in the Caribbean, we need to address the combined issue of hunger and nutrition. Our food consumption patterns in recent decades has resulted in high levels of food imports. I think we now have almost an 11 billion a year food import bill for a place that, 6 million, 7 million people at max, which says a lot. Why do we have such a high import bill? And the dependence on imports raises significant issues about food security. So what we have is not just a high level of food imports, but also it has ignited a silent pandemic of obesity and health-related issues.
Let's head back over to the sports studio now for the second half in sports. Damien?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lisa. Barbados Lumber Company, Lakers Sports Club and City United Celtics registered convincing victories over their opponents in the 2022 BABA Club Challenge. Lakers won by a 30-point margin over Panthers, while Celtics brushed aside East Avenue Realtors' Young Bears by 38 points.
Husband St. James, the venue. City United Celtics playing East Avenue Realtors, Young Bears in black. Opening sequence, Stevenson calendar penetrates the defense, smooth finish. Team high 14 points on the night. Young Bears started positively as well. Absolutely no defensive pressure. Left side of the court, fruitful, knocks it down. But the first half really belonged to the Celtics, dominant in the paint.
clear size advantage. That's 2 more. Celtics leading 46-24 at the break. Switch of ends for the third quarter. Just that kind of night for the Celtics. Everything dropping. Rattles in for another couple points. Young Bears had one player in double figures as a number of their efforts were fiercely contested. Christian Taylor with some room to operate, nails it. Game high 16 points. But the combined effort from the Celtics was too much. Antoine Lawrence delivering the teardrop 2 in traffic and add the fall for good measure. 3-point play. And he was good enough to sink the extra point from the free throw line. Finished with 11 points. The Young Bears mauled in the end by the Celtics, who were stacking up the points, going on to take the win 79-41. Second contest of a doubleheader. Barbados Lumber Company Lakers battling Panthers in black, moving the rock well, mid-range, sweet. Panthers on the board. But you've got to stay sharp at the other end. Justin Bramall playing provider. David Walks with the bucket, had 11 points. Added spice to the highlight reel. Another fast break. And Micaiah Moore on the receiving end takes flight, throws it down, game high 20 points. He also had a solid cleanup campaign going as well. Bramall off target. Moore with the huge wingspan takes charge in the trenches. Add 2 more. The bright sparks for the Panthers. Jamon Phillips and Joshua Marshall. Phillips going coast to coast. Opts for the left hand, rolls it in. Team high 14 points. On this play, Panthers defense stuck together and then release Marshall up court. 1-on-1. Off the backboard and in for 2 of his 11. But they trail 17-32 at halftime. In the second we go, switch of ends. Moore from LSC. McCarry Jones, Midas touch. 2 of his 10. Down 32-56 heading into the fourth. The burden seemed too much for Panthers. Well, they definitely couldn't celebrate the big plays. Phillips from upstairs, 3. However, the informed Lakers Sports Club going on to blow away the Panthers 79-49. Well, the biggest story of the 2022 U.S. Open is continuing tonight as Serena Williams is currently taking on Ajla Tomljanovic of Australia in the third round at Arthur Ashe Stadium in Flushing Meadows. Serena was broken in the very first game but broke back immediately, so she's up a break. They score a short while ago in the first set. Serena was leading 5-3. That match is live, of course, on MCTV's ESPN channel 302. Lisa, that is sports tonight for me. Back over to you.
Thank you very much, Damien. And that's our news for tonight. On behalf of the entire team, thanks for joining us. Good night.
Thanks for visiting us. To get more stories like this one, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.